Hi, I'm Laura Mukerji, and I'm so glad you're here. This session, Take a Chance on Flexibility, Lessons from Homeschooling to Support Gifted Students, comes straight from my heart and my experience as both an educator and a homeschool mom of 3 gifted daughters. For 8 years, I homeschooled, and those years completely reshaped the way that I see learning, growth, and what it means to really meet students where they are. In this session, I'm going to share what I learned from that experience, how homeschooling taught me lessons about flexibility, curiosity, authentic learning, and how I think a lot of those ideas can directly apply to classrooms and schools. So whether you're a teacher, a gifted coordinator, or someone who just loves learning, I hope that this time helps you think differently maybe about what flexible student-centered learning can look like. Before we dive in, here's a little bit about who I am and why this topic matters to me so much. I'm an educational consultant and founder of Interested Educational Solutions, where I work with schools, teachers, and families to create learning environments where both educators and students can thrive. I'm also a board member for the Wisconsin Association for Talented and Gifted, and I'm a lifelong advocate of gifted learners. My background is in English and in gifted education, and I'm currently pursuing my master's in educational psychology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. On a personal side, I'm married. I have 3 gifted daughters who are 14, 13, and 9. And yes, we all survived homeschooling together and loved it most of the time. I am also a plant collector, a gardener in training, and I love creative hobbies like embroidery and watercolor painting. All of these experiences, teaching, homeschooling, and parenting, and even coaching now, have shaped the way that I think about flexibility, curiosity, and what it means to help students truly thrive. Here's where we're headed today. We'll start with a look at my homeschooling journey, what led us there, and what those years taught me about learning. Then I'll walk you through 10 key lessons that I believe can transform how we think about flexibility and gifted education. Finally, we'll end with a short reflection and action plan, something you can take with you to use in your own teaching or leadership practice. My goal is simple, that you'll leave with at least one idea, one shift in perspective, or one practical strategy that you can apply right away to support your gifted learners. Let's begin with a little story. This is the story of my homeschooling journey. When our oldest daughter was just 2 weeks old, we packed up and we moved away from my family for my husband's job. It was supposed to be just a 3 short year adventure in Michigan, but eventually ended up leading us here to settle in Wisconsin. When we settled in, I put our daughter in school and quickly realized that something wasn't right. While other children were tracing sandpaper letters, she was already reading, but instead of being seen as advanced or having that being seen as a good thing, she was often seen as a distraction. The daily tears before school made it super clear to us that she just was not thriving. And I remember thinking to myself, I can do this better. And maybe just for 1 year, 1 year I'll homeschool. That 1 year turned into 2, and then another and another. And eventually I added my second daughter to our homeschool and then my third. And every year I kept saying, just 1 more year, until I finally knew that we were ready to learn from other teachers who could help them grow even further. During those years, I didn't just learn about homeschooling, I learned about education itself. I learned to see the whole learner, not just subjects or grade levels, but the full picture of how growth unfolds over time. Those years became the foundation for everything I'm going to share with you today, lessons about flexibility, curiosity, and authentic learning. Lesson 1 is ask better questions. One of the biggest lessons I learned is that questions drive everything. In homeschooling, I found the best learning moments started not with answers, but with curiosity. The power of a single question, something like, why do you think that? Or what might happen if, could open a doorway into much deeper thinking. For teachers, that might mean replacing one low level question each day with an open ended one, or using assessments as a way to give feedback instead of simply grading. For parents or for homeschoolers, it means resisting the urge to explain right away. I know that that can be hard, especially if there's some of those awkward silent pauses, but maybe try. Instead, model curiosity. Wonder out loud with your child and ask your child to teach you something that they've just learned. When we ask better questions, we stop treating knowledge as something to deliver and start seeing it instead as something that we explore together. Another huge takeaway that I learned is that pacing is deeply personal. Every learner moves differently, and flexibility is what truly honors that growth. With my daughters, I learned that gifted kids can develop asynchronously. Maybe they're racing ahead in one area but struggling in another. One might be years ahead in reading but still needs support in writing or in math. And that's okay. Just as how our kids didn't always walk at the same time or talk at the same time, they don't always learn math at the same time either. In schools, we often talk about keeping students on grade level, but grade level doesn't always reflect readiness. When we focus on mastery instead of milestones, we honor the learner, not just the label. So, as teachers, it might look like using pre assessments so students can test out of what they already know, maybe offer enrichment options, or normalize flexible pacing with classroom language. Something like, you may need more time, and that's totally fine, and really mean it too. Pacing isn't just about speed, it's about growth. When we give learners permission to move at their own rhythm, we see them flourish. Lesson three, everything is connected. When you homeschool, subjects naturally blend together. A science experiment can turn into a writing project. A trip to the farmer's market can become a lesson in math or in geography and in communication. Gifted learners thrive when they see the bigger picture, when they understand how ideas link across disciplines. In traditional classrooms, often we separate subjects into boxes: math here, reading there, science later. But when we create cross curricular connections through projects, themes, or shared inquiry, students begin to see how learning actually works in the real world. So I recommend that you try one cross curricular project this quarter. Let students design something that ties multiple areas together, or simply ask, how can you do this in a way that connects to something that we learned yesterday? Or can you think of a way that this connects to something you're learning in your social studies class? Once students start making these kinds of connections themselves, is when learning becomes authentic, memorable, and truly joyful. Lesson four is one of my favorites: choice, challenge, and failure. Homeschooling showed me that when kids have a say in their learning, they take more ownership. But they also need real challenge and the freedom to fail safely. What do I mean by that? Gifted students often fear mistakes because they're used to things coming so easily. When we reframe failure as feedback, we help build resilience. In the classroom, that might mean offering a simple choice board, a project menu, or an option for students to revise and resubmit work in a way that helps them to learn resilience and to show growth. At home, I learned to let my kids design parts of their project, pick their own research topics, and even sometimes grade themselves. That would help them reflect on what they learned and also think about what they might do differently next time. When we combine choice, challenge, and failure, we create a safe space for authentic growth. And we show students that learning is about curiosity, not about perfection or only about getting the right answer. Lesson 5 might be the most important one. Relationships always come first. Gifted learners often feel misunderstood or compared. Connection, genuine human connection, is what allows them to take academic risks. And homeschooling, I saw every emotion, every meltdown, every moment of frustration up close. But I also saw that when my kids felt seen and supported, everything else would fall into place. In schools, that might mean using the 2 by 10 strategy, spending 2 minutes a day for 10 days talking with a student about something unrelated to academics, or simply learning a new personal fact about each student. I promise that if you try this, especially with those struggling students, you'll see an improvement either in classroom behavior or in academic achievement. Relationships aren't an extra thing we have to do when we have time. They're really the foundation that makes everything else in the classroom possible. Lesson 6, the journey matters more than the product. Gifted students can be perfectionists. They want the final draft to be flawless. But real learning is what happens in that messy middle. It's in the drafts and the revisions and the mistakes and the work that it takes to create the final draft. Homeschooling taught me to celebrate the process, not just the polished, finished result. We kept journals, messy science logs, and even failed art projects because each one told a story about student growth. In classrooms, portfolios and reflection logs can do the same thing. Let students track progress over time, compare early work to later attempts, and reflect on what they've learned along the way. Lesson 7 is something every teacher and parent will appreciate. Less busy work, more purpose. Busy work fills time, but meaningful work is what fills minds. Gifted students, in particular, crave challenge and authenticity. They see through the filler instantly. In homeschooling, we replaced worksheets with real tasks, maybe something like a writing worksheet with writing a family newsletter, something like planning a vacation budget instead of just isolated math problems. In classrooms, it could be as simple as swapping one worksheet a week for a really great discussion, maybe a problem solving challenge, or even a Socratic circle. When students understand why they're learning something, that's when you'll really notice motivation and engagement skyrocket. The next lesson I learned is that authentic audiences can change learning instantly. When students know that their work will be shared with others, whether it's classmates, families, or the community, their effort and pride in their work are going to increase dramatically. Homeschooling made this super easy for me to see. My girls would pour their hearts into a project when they knew that grandparents or their friends would see it. In schools, that can mean publishing student work maybe in a class blog, or creating a hallway gallery, or inviting community members to view presentations. One really great idea that I've seen is having different presentations at a nursing home. It's really great for the residents and for the students as well. When learning leaves the walls of the classroom is when it becomes real. And that sense of purpose can transform everything. Lesson 9 might seem simple, but it's actually really powerful. And it's all about daily routines. Gifted learners often thrive on structure because it creates the safety that they need to be able to explore freely. In homeschooling, our day started with a morning basket or a read aloud, and the consistent rhythm really set the tone for connection as well as curiosity. In classroom, routines might look a little bit different. Maybe something like a morning meeting, a gratitude reflection. Maybe you do something for each day of the week, like a Friday celebration. Um, but having that schedule can really anchor the day. It can reduce anxiety and make a really good headspace for students and a good space for real learning. Consistency does not limit creativity, it supports it. Lesson 10 was a little unexpected to me coming into homeschooling as a classroom teacher. That lesson is that environment is the silent teacher. Where we learn affects how we learn. Lighting, seating, and atmosphere all shape focus and creativity. Homeschooling gave me the freedom to experiment a little bit with this. Sometimes we worked at the kitchen table, other times on the couch or outside. And I saw firsthand how the environment could impact engagement. Teachers can do this too. Try things like flexible seating, soft lighting, or even gentle instrumental music during independent work. Or if you want to get the kids up and moving, some 80s rock can always go a long way. A few plans and visuals can also make the classroom feel more human, especially for those visual learners. It's these small environmental shifts that can make a really big difference in student comfort and creativity. Now that you've heard the 10 lessons, let's take a moment to pause and reflect. Think about one idea or strategy that resonated with you today. What's one way you could take that idea and apply it directly to your classroom? Maybe it's something like asking open ended questions, or maybe it's giving students more choice and voice over their projects. Maybe it's simply creating space for slower pacing or trying to have more authentic relationships with students. I'd like for you to take a moment to jot down that thought, or maybe just sit with it and visualize what it could look like in your learning space. If you're watching this with a colleague, talk through it together. What would it take to make that small change tomorrow? I'm going to pause this video and give you about, 20 or 30 seconds to really sit with this idea and to come up with an action plan that you can use first thing tomorrow. In the live session of the talk, this is where each group was invited to share their biggest takeaway. For the webinar version, I invite you to share your reflection in another way. Maybe it's writing it down, possibly posting about it on social media, or sharing it with your team during your next PD day or even at lunch. If you do share online, I'd love to hear what resonated you with the most. You can tag me or connect with me through my website, learnwithinterested.com. The best ideas spread when we talk about them. Thank you so much for joining me for Take a Chance on Flexibility, Lessons from Homeschooling to Support Gifted Students. Flexibility takes courage, but it's always worth it. When we take a chance, our students get the chance to soar. If you'd like to explore these ideas further, you can find handouts, resources, and coaching opportunities on my website, learnwithinterested.com. And remember, you don't have to change everything at once. Sometimes the smallest act of flexibility, a single open ended question, an extra day for mastery, or a different way of seeing a student can make all the difference. Thanks again for spending your time here with me today. I hope that you'll take these ideas and make them your own.